There's a book that never asks for applause, only obedience. It doesn't come with genealogies or horoscopes. It comes with structure. It's the quiet manual that turned merchants into monarchs, bankers into sovereigns, apprentices into architects of legacy. If the goal is to get rich without luck, without talent, without inheritance, this is where the road begins. In the laws that make fortune bow to virtue. For years, the common belief dominated. Money was chaos. A dance of chance, politics of time and grace of birthright. Working harder seemed like the right spell, until the hammer of reality broke nothing. There was no secret passage through the maze of brute force. What changed wasn't the volume of sweat. It was the understanding. Wealth, like power, obeys an architecture. And architecture doesn't depend on birth data. It depends on design and stone placed correctly. Before we go further, if this framework resonates, consider subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications. We're building a library of timeless principles applied to modern wealth creation, releasing new insights weekly that compound over time. There's a pinned comment below with a roadmap of the entire series, each video a stone in the cathedral we're building together. Now back to the 4 laws. First law, own a skill that pays, like choosing the single blade you intend to survive all seasons with. There are 4 and only 4 swords that cut through any market: selling, making, designing, hunting. To choose is to accept that breadth without depth is confusion. To refuse is to allow life to become a fair of distractions. The ritual is simple and hard. Find the best practitioner nearby. Copy the rhythm, double the volume. Accept the humiliation of the first 100 wrong strikes. By day, the arena. By night, the map. Weekly, a mirror that returns what self-pity won't see. Monthly, a pruning of branches that bear no fruit. There's no gift here, only counting. The teenager everyone called just another one trained ideas like sharpening a blade with a dictionary. 1 random word, 20 concepts, 100 failures before 10,000 attentive eyes. Today, each strike reaches multitudes. The elder everyone called slow hunted like reading an encyclopedia, with a single question in mind. Where is the price wrong? 4,000 pages for one yes, 12 correct decisions in a lifetime that became empire. 2 rare skills in the top 20%, and the competition map dissolves. Design with persuasion, creation with sales, code with marketing, aesthetics with business. Virtue isn't an adjective, it's a method, cultivated excellence that makes luck look like obedience. In Jungian terms, this is confronting the shadow of incompetence. Most people avoid the discomfort of seeing their own mediocrity clearly, so they blame external forces, luck, genes, circumstances. But the shadow isn't the enemy. It's the unworked for. When you name it, when you sit with the fact that you're not yet excellent, you transmute shame into raw material. The blade metaphor lives here. A sword isn't born sharp. It's beaten, heated, folded, hammered. Every strike in the forge is a choice to integrate the shadow rather than project it onto bad luck. Think of your skill as a blade thrust into the ground. At first it stands alone, unremarkable. But as you sharpen it daily, it begins to catch light. Others notice. Opportunities gather around it like iron filings to a magnet. This isn't magic. It's magnetism earned through repetition. The blade becomes your true name, the thing people know you for when they close their eyes. If you're finding this useful, take a moment to like this video. It helps others discover these principles when the algorithm decides what to surface. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. We're in this for the long compounding curve, and so should you be. Second law, don't rent your life. Own the engine. Her salary is silk that shines while it tightens. It calms hunger at the cost of hunger for the world. The ceiling of 24 hours weighs even on golden consultants. No one doubles the wall of time by trading hours for coins. Sovereignty is born when a person stops fighting for another's throne and plants a banner on their own ground. Equity. There are 3 roads to this, and none requires pedigree: code, content, capital. Code turns service into asset. The designer who decorated others' castles realized she was drawing gold for pockets not her own. She converted aesthetics into digital brick, themes, templates, licenses, built once, sold 1,000 times. The clock stopped being executioner and became decoration on the wall of a house that could be in Bali today and Japan tomorrow. Content turns voice into patrimony. It's the art of raising a library of ideas that continues persuading when the author sleeps, eats, travels. It doesn't need crowns of celebrity. It needs narrative engineering and relentless distribution. When the moment comes, the tide has already been pulled by months of invisible moon. Attention isn't vanity, it's cheap risk capital, an asset that, well composed, reduces cost of capital for any future venture. Capital turns reading of the world into participation. You learn from operators. You negotiate margin of safety. You use funds from those with excess money to buy time no one possesses. The modern hunter doesn't carry antelope on the shoulder. Carries contracts with clear asymmetry. Downside protected, upside with stairs. It's not money as reward. It's money as weapon, wielded by those who don't fear the right risk. This is the Jungian concept of individuation applied to wealth. Most people never individuate economically. They remain in the collective unconscious of get a job, climb the ladder, retire at 65. That's not a personal path. It's an inherited script, written by industrial age assumptions that no longer serve. To individuate economically means to ask, what engine can I own? What piece of the value chain can I control? The shadow here is dependency, the unconscious terror of stepping out of the employee identity. But on the other side of that terror is sovereignty. Machiavelli advised princes to learn not to be good when goodness is the varnish of weakness. Here this means refusing the social virtue of conformity when it costs sovereignty. Saying no to the boss's praise when yes would mean selling another month of life. Saying yes to the unknown that grants rights to a brick in the castle. Remember the blade we sharpened in the first law? Now we're attaching it to an engine. A sharp skill employed in someone else's machine makes them rich. A sharp skill attached to your own engine makes you sovereign. The difference is ownership. If this idea landed, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Send them the link. Wealth isn't a solo sport. It's built in networks, and you become the node others trust by sharing what works. Third law, impatient in action, patient in results. The earth doesn't rush the tree because a person shouts. The shout only scares the birds. If the blade was chosen and the engine was coupled, the math is already in your favor. What remains is to protect the compounding from anxiety. Urgency is to rise today. Impatience is to dig up the root because the canopy didn't appear on schedule. The rule is clear. Act in minutes, measure in months, harvest in years. The most common error is confusing tactics with restlessness and reprogramming the machine before it warms up. Pivot by data, not by boredom. Adjust by market, not by mood. The cathedrals of Florence began with one stone, knowing the summit wouldn't see the first mason. Still, stone upon stone until the dome taught the sky to obey. Getting truly rich happens once. After that, the person guards against becoming poor again. Discipline in the capex of the soul, opex of habit, dividends of time. This is where the Jungian shadow of inflation of the ego appears. When results are slow, ego whispers, maybe you're not special. Maybe this won't work. Maybe luck really is the answer. That voice isn't truth. It's the undermining function of the psyche testing commitment. The antidote isn't positive thinking. It's mythic patience. Think of Odysseus lashed to the mast, hearing the sirens but refusing to steer the ship toward the rocks. The sirens are impatience, distraction, comparison. The mast is the structure you built when you were clear-headed. Here's the blade again, planted in the ground, attached to the engine, now growing roots. Those roots are invisible. For months, maybe years, nothing seems to happen above ground. But below, the root system is spreading, finding water, anchoring deep. When the wind comes, shallow roots topple. Deep roots weather storms and eventually break through stone. The fitness analogy proves the ignored obvious. Those who eat clean, train, and sleep don't need luck to get fit. They need repetition. With wealth, the same. It's the right repetition over sufficient time that makes victory boring and defeat voluntary. When patience wavers, choose an example that defeats the myth of talent. The comedian who had no ear for the banjo swore to play for 40 years. Won awards in 10. Talent was myth, resistance truth. At this point, if you're still here, you're self-selecting into the builders. Save this video to a playlist. You'll want to return to it when doubt visits. And comment below. What's the one blade you're sharpening right now? Let's build accountability in public. Fourth law, proximity is power. Fortune may be blind, but she likes to live where the bold build. Cities change, the principle doesn't. To accelerate is to change ground, physical or digital. The important thing is to stay near the right fire. where the average is high enough that the old ceiling seems lukewarm. A cramped house with 6 founders taught more than any. Class comfort burned, ego tested, network multiplied. The day a person realizes they're the smartest in the room is the day they need to change rooms. Intelligence without friction becomes shiny dust. The declared enemy is complacency. War can't be avoided, only postponed to others' advantage. Those who live with complaint inherit powerlessness. Those who live with builders inherit cadence. If there's no budget to move cities, move communities, enter places where excellence is baseline and the spoken language is that of work, not alibi. This is the collective unconscious at work, but inverted. Jung taught that we absorb the psychic atmosphere of those around us. If you're surrounded by people for whom 6 figures is unimaginable, that ceiling becomes your unconscious limit. But if you're in a room where 6 figures is the entry point and 8 figures is discussed casually, your internal thermostat recalibrates. You're not trying to adopt their arrogance. You're trying to adopt their assumptions about what's normal. The blade, the engine, and the roots are now surrounded by an army. Proximity is that army. It's not about mentors giving you secrets. It's about being in an environment where your current edge is baseline, forcing you to sharpen faster or be left behind. The shadow here is comfort addiction, the unconscious desire to remain the big fish in the small pond because it feels safe. But safety is the slow death of potential. Think of the sword in the ground again. If it's in a field alone, it rusts. If it's in an armory surrounded by other swords being sharpened daily, it stays keen. Proximity is the armory. If this resonates, turn on notifications. The next videos in this series break down how to find those rooms, how to enter them without credentials, and how to stay once you're in. Don't miss it. Now bring the 4 laws together like assembling a machine: sword, castle, dynasty, army. The blade cuts the jungle and opens the path. The engine turns path into road. Time turns road into trade route. Proximity turns route into network. The result is a crooked statistic. The chances of failure collapse not by magic but by design. It becomes difficult to lose when the gaps are sealed. Here's the full map. First, you chose a blade and sharpened it until it could cut through market noise. Selling, making, designing, hunting. You didn't diversify. You went deep. That blade is now your identity, the thing people pay you for reflexively. Second, you built an engine, code, content, or capital. You stopped renting your time and started owning the means of production. Your income decoupled from your hours. Third, you protected the compounding. You acted fast, measured slow, and harvested over years. You didn't pivot out of boredom. You pivoted by data. Fourth, you moved into proximity with people for whom your ceiling was their floor. You let that recalibrate your sense of possible. These 4 laws aren't steps. They're layers. They stack. And they don't require luck, because luck is what people call structure they didn't see being built. They don't require talent, because talent is what people call training when they arrive late. They don't require inheritance, because inheritance is what people call the castle when they discover it has an owner. The Jungian frame here is the integration of the self, the realization that you are not a victim of external forces, but the author of an inner architecture. The self in Jung's model is the organizing principle, the inner sovereign. Wealth built on these 4 laws is an outer reflection of an inner sovereignty. You're not chasing money. You're becoming the kind of person whose internal order naturally generates external abundance. Let's apply this. You're going to take 1 action this week. Not 4. 1. Choose the blade. If you don't have one yet, pick from the 4. Selling, making, designing, hunting. Don't pick what sounds impressive. Pick what you'd be willing to do badly for 100 hours before you're mediocre, and mediocre for 1,000 hours before you're good. That's your blade. Then find 1 person, online or offline, who is in the top 20% of that skill. Study them. Not in a creepy way, in a craftsman way. What do they do daily that you don't? What do they refuse that you tolerate? Write it down. This week, copy 1 habit. Just 1, not 10. The blade gets sharp 1 strike at a time, not by swinging wildly in all directions. Next week, double the volume. If they publish 1 piece of content a week, you publish 2. If they make 10 sales calls, you make 20. The doubling isn't about being better. It's about creating enough surface area for feedback. You need the market to tell you what's working, and the market only speaks to volume. Monthly prune. Look at what you did for 30 days. What bore fruit? What was motion disguised as progress? Cut the latter. This isn't motivational. It's agricultural. You're not a hustler. You're a gardener with a very sharp blade. That's the micro-action. Blade model double prune. 4 steps, 1 cycle. Repeated until the market has no choice but to pay attention. This isn't theory. This is how the merchant becomes monarch. The apprentice becomes architect. If you've watched this far, you're already different. Most people click away the moment discomfort arrives. You stayed. That tells you something about your willingness to integrate the shadow, to do the work that has no applause in the middle. Subscribe if you haven't. We're releasing the next part of this series in 7 days, how to build the engine once the blade is sharp. You'll want to be notified. The inheritance that matters isn't blood, it's method. Luck is the label they place when they didn't see the counting. Talent is the nickname they give to training when they arrive late. Inheritance is what they call the castle when they discover it has an owner. Virtue is the only magic here. Excellence practiced until the world has no choice but to call it destiny. Those who raise the sword, capture the castle, wait for time and march with the right army discover that the map was already written. It just needed to be read. If the next step asks for a verb, let it be build. If it asks for a place, let it be where the flame is high. If it asks for a time, let it be as long as necessary. Fortune crowns those who build in silence and resist out loud. To turn this understanding into movement, there's a practical invitation at the end of this road. Subscribe to keep learning with a community that speaks the language of work and practices the compounding of character, capital, and code. When the right army marches, luck asks for passage. Now the deeper architecture reveals itself. These 4 laws aren't separate tracks. They're concentric circles around a center that most never name. That center is what Machiavelli understood and what modernity forgot. Virtue isn't virtue in the moral sense. It's the capacity to shape reality through disciplined force of will, married to an accurate reading of the terrain. The terrain today isn't battlefields. It's markets, networks, attention, and code. But the principle holds. Let's go 1 layer deeper into each law because surface understanding produces surface results. The blade you sharpen isn't just a skill. It's the externalization of your psyche's dominant function. In Jungian terms, each of us has a superior function. Thinking, feeling, sensation, intuition. The mistake most people make is trying to develop all 4 equally. That's not individuation. That's dilution. Individuation means knowing which function is your sword and wielding it with such precision that the inferior functions organize themselves around it, not against it. If you're a natural thinker, your blade is analytical problem-solving, code, strategy, systems design. If you're a feeler, your blade is relational architecture, sales, persuasion, community building. If you're sensation-dominant, your blade is aesthetic or physical craft, design, making, embodied work. If you're intuitive, your blade is pattern recognition, hunting opportunities, seeing what's emerging before it's obvious. The first law isn't pick a skill. It's discover your superior function and turn it into economic force. Most people fail here because they pick what sounds impressive rather than what aligns with their psychic structure. The second law, owning the engine, is where the shadow of dependence hides. Dependence isn't just economic. It's archetypal. The employee archetype is the eternal child, someone who trades autonomy for the illusion of parental care. The company becomes the parent, the salary becomes the allowance, and the performance review becomes the report card. This isn't moral judgment, it's structural observation. The eternal child cannot build wealth because wealth requires the integration of the father archetype, the capacity to self-authorize, to take existential risk, to parent oneself economically. When you build an engine, you're not just changing income streams, you're performing an initiatory act. You're killing the dependent child and birthing the sovereign adult. That's why it's terrifying. Every initiation involves a symbolic death. The terror isn't irrational. It's the psyche recognizing that the old identity must die for the new one to live. Code, content, capital. These aren't business models. They're modern initiation paths. Each one asks, are you willing to stop being taken care of and start taking care of yourself? The third law, patience in results, maps directly onto the Jungian concept of the transcendent function. The transcendent function is the psyche's capacity to hold tension between opposites without collapsing into one pole. In this case, the opposites are urgency And patience, action and stillness, effort and surrender. Most people collapse. They either act without patience, pivoting frantically, or they wait without action, mistaking passivity for wisdom. The transcendent function is the third position, acting with full intensity while remaining unattached to the timeline of results. This is where the blade metaphor deepens. The sword in the ground isn't just planted. It's vibrating. It's under constant tension between being driven deeper by your daily effort and being pulled upward by unseen forces. Market timing, network effects, compounding. You can't control the latter. But if you stop the former, the sword stops vibrating, the field collapses, and nothing emerges. The transcendent function is the capacity to keep driving the sword down while trusting that the upward pull is happening, even when invisible. Here's the practical test. Can you work for a year without external validation? Not praise, not revenue, not recognition, just you and the work. If the answer is no, the ego is still running the operation, and the ego cannot build wealth. The ego needs constant feedback because it's not rooted in the self. The self doesn't need applause. It needs coherence. When the work aligns with the self, the doing is the reward. Money becomes a byproduct, not the purpose. The fourth law, proximity, is about the psychic field. Jung discovered that human beings don't have separate psyches. We swim in a collective psychic ocean. The people around you aren't just influences. They're the water you're swimming in. If the water is stagnant, full of complaint, mediocrity, and justification, that's the water your psyche absorbs. If the water is alive, moving, full of people building and risking and failing and trying again, that water recodes your unconscious assumptions. Most people misunderstand this as surround yourself with successful people. That's the surface. The depth is surround yourself with people whose shadow has been worked. Because unworked shadow creates toxic proximity. You don't want to be around arrogant people who mistake wealth for worth, or hustlers who mistake motion for progress, or gurus who mistake followers for wisdom. You want to be around people who have confronted their own mediocrity, integrated it, and emerged with a quiet, non-defensive competence. That's the water that heals. Now integrate all four laws into a single image. Picture the sword again. It's planted in the ground, yes, but now you see the full picture. The blade is sharp because you spent years grinding it against the whetstone of deliberate practice, choosing one superior function and making it economically lethal. The ground it's planted in isn't dirt. It's the engine you built, code that runs while you sleep, content that persuades while you eat, capital that compounds while you travel. The roots spreading below are time, years of patient, unglamorous repetition that no one saw, no one applauded, but which anchored the structure so deep that storms can't topple it. And surrounding the sword is the armory, the proximity of other swords being sharpened, other builders working, a psychic field so charged with possibility that your internal thermostat has no choice but to reset. That's the full map. 4 laws, 1 architecture, and none of it requires luck, because luck is the word people use when they didn't watch the construction. None of it requires talent, because talent is what people call obsessive practice when they arrive after the result is visible. None of it requires inheritance, because inheritance is what people call ownership, when they forget someone had to build it first. But here's the shadow no one talks about. Even when you do all 4 laws correctly, there's a final threshold most people refuse to cross. It's the threshold of self-forgiveness, because on the path to wealth, you will make mistakes. You'll choose the wrong blade initially and waste a year. You'll build an engine that doesn't scale and have to start over. You'll lose patience and pivot too early, or hold too long and miss the window. You'll trust the wrong proximity and get burned. And if you can't forgive yourself for those errors, you'll stop before the compounding kicks in. The shadow of perfectionism will kill the process. This is where the Jungian concept of the wounded healer appears. The healer isn't effective because they avoided wounds. They're effective because they integrated them. The wealthy person isn't someone who avoided failure. They're someone who failed, learned, adjusted, and kept moving. The wound becomes the source of wisdom. The scar becomes the credential. If you're carrying shame about past financial mistakes, unworked shame will sabotage every future attempt. The psyche won't let you succeed if success means proving that your past self was worthless. You have to forgive the past self, honor the lesson, and release the shame. Only then does the path clear. So here's the final micro-action. the one that integrates everything. Sit down with a notebook. Write down 3 financial or professional mistakes you made in the past that you're still carrying shame about. Name them. Then for each one, write one thing you learned that you wouldn't have learned any other way. Not a consolation prize. A real structural lesson that changed how you operate. That's the integration. That's the wound becoming wisdom. Then write down your current blade, your current engine, your current measure of patience, and your current proximity. Be honest. If you don't have a blade yet, write, I'm choosing one this week. If you don't have an engine, write, I'm building one this quarter. If you're not patient, write, I'm committing to 1 year without pivot unless data says otherwise. If your proximity is weak, write, I'm joining one community of builders this month. Make it real. Make it dated. Make it accountable. The difference between someone who watches this video and someone who becomes wealthy isn't intelligence. It's not discipline. It's not even skill. It's the willingness to take the invisible action when no one's watching and no one will praise it. That's the action that compounds. That's the action that builds the cathedral one stone at a time while the crowd mocks the empty foundation. You're at the end now. If you're still here, you've self-selected. You're not here for entertainment. You're here for transmission. Subscribe because this is a multi-part architecture, and missing one piece weakens the whole structure. The next video breaks down the exact engine blueprints, how to build code-based income, content-based income, and capital-based income from zero. You'll want to see it. Comment below with one word, the blade you're choosing. Let the algorithm know this matters, and let yourself know you're committing in public. The sword is in your hand now. The ground is in front of you. The years are waiting. The army is gathering. What remains is the single decision that separates the one who dreams of wealth from the one who architects it. That decision isn't I want to be rich. It's I'm willing to become the kind of person who builds wealth. Even when no one sees it, even when it's hard, even when luck looks like the easier story, fortune bows to virtue. Not because fortune is kind, but because virtue makes fortune irrelevant. Build the blade, own the engine, protect the compounding, find the army. Then watch as luck becomes the label others use when they didn't see you counting. You may not realize it yet, but this process is never truly over. Wealth is an architecture, not a destination. Every stone laid is both foundation and invitation. Today's blade, this week's engine, next year's patience, they're cycles, not walls. With each cycle, your compass narrows, away from noise toward quiet mastery. People will ask your secret. Some will attribute your progress to unnamed advantages or begin searching for hidden formulae coded into your bloodline. But you'll know, it was built strike by strike, decision by decision. Share your progress with those committed to their own cathedral. Save these steps, reflect when doubt creeps in, and let your actions speak louder than stories of luck or talent. When setbacks arrive, as they inevitably do, remember, scars tell a story not of failure, but perseverance. That's the architecture. That's what Machiavelli meant by shaping fortune rather than begging for it. Now, before you go, consider connecting with others here in the comments, mapping your journey and exchanging lessons. The value of community multiplies returns. No castle was ever built without an army. Like the video if you found value. Subscribe for the next phase of the blueprint, and let your future self thank you for the steps you take today.